Welcome to today's session. My name's Ian Johnson. I'm one of the business development managers here at Axians. And we're delighted today to announce that Pentera, a key vendor in the automated security validation market, have been onboarded today. And the whole purpose of today's session is for me and Ben to run through why Pentera, the reasons why we as a reseller have onboarded them into our security proposition. So welcome, Ben.
Thank you, Ian.
No problems.
Pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much.
I'll introduce myself. I'm Ben Turnbull, the channel sales manager for the UK and I for Pentera. Been at Pentera for 18 months, but I've known the team at Ian and the rest of the team at Axians for a lot longer than that. We go back quite a long way, I think it's fair to say.
So 15 years, 10 years?
10 years, it's going to be 10 years,
yeah.
But as soon as I arrived at Pentera, I knew that Axians were one of the partners that I wanted to partner with. And I know, obviously, you partner with us in other regions successfully, in the DACH region, in France as well, I think, or certainly in that Benelux region, at least. So, yeah, great to be here.
Fantastic, thank you. So I think as a starting point, I think it'd be really good to understand what automated security validation is. It's not something that even I had come across in my many years in security. Pen testing, vulnerability assessments, patch management, all that sort of stuff has been sort of the go-to sort of toolkit to utilise to help people understand their security posture. So what is automated security validation?
So automated security, I'm not surprised you haven't heard of it, because it is quite a new concept. Although Pentera aren't new as a business, we've been going for a number of years now. Officially launched 2015, but in stealth mode until 2018.
Okay.
Which is when we really came to market. But we've carved the market ourselves, really. Pentera are the only
because I noticed
people.
Actually that IDC, Gartner, none of them have really got an automated security validation Magic Quadrant either.
No, so we fall more into, we can go into a bit more about how we compare later on with the breach and attack simulation Magic Quadrant, really. Okay. But there's a difference, and we'll go into that further a little bit later on, after I've sort of gone on about after we talk about automated security validation. So what is automated security validation, I think, was the question. Yeah. And it is quite simply that companies spend a huge amount of money on defensive cybersecurity controls.
Okay.
Whether that's EDR, MDR, XDR, whatever letter you want to put as an abbreviation in front of DR these days, it seems. Yeah. But you've got that, you've got web application firewalls, you've got IDS, you've got IPS, you've got endpoint security, traditional AV, whatever it is. People spend, businesses, end users, your customers spend hundreds of thousands, if not millions of pounds on defensive cybersecurity controls.
Yep.
But the reality is, unless they're stress testing them often, you don't actually know if they'll do the job that you've paid them to do.
Okay.
Whether they've been configured correctly, whether someone's made a change and it hasn't, you haven't picked up that's let a potential vulnerability escape into the wild. Okay. You don't actually know if they'll do the job that you're paying them to do.
No, because you said you might do a quarterly, 6 monthly, yearly pen test, which will give you some visibility of where your gaps, your holes, and some areas that you might want to focus on. But okay, so it's more about that continuous validation.
So most companies would have heard of penetration testing, right? Most companies would have done penetration testing. They're either legislated to, regulated to, or people just do it for their own sanity. But the reality is, most people do that once a year, once a quarter, biannually, whatever it was that you just said. Most companies don't have an internal penetration testing or red teaming team within them as a business, within their security practice as a business.
Okay.
So from that point of view, you're making changes daily to your security controls, to your internal infrastructure, to your servers, to your workstations. Your users are making changes to their workstations, whether you enforce a policy that they shouldn't or they don't. They still,
Absolutely.
This stuff in IT and security is being interacted with and touched on a day-to-day basis to make people's lives easier.
And I'm assuming that with COVID and the changes to workforces now not necessarily just being in the office, they're now mobile, that security where you had all that, you had your gate around your office and therefore everything was being protected. Now you've got people out on the road.
Exactly. So
permanently now, not just on a sort of maybe daily or weekly basis. They're now sat at home somewhere. That parameter now is is vast.
Yeah, it's not just there anymore,
No,
right? Like you said,
everywhere.
it's dispersed. And so what Pentera does from an automated security validation point of view is you don't subscribe to Pentera you do subscribe to us as a team of people, because we are all humans who work for Pentera, right? It's not robots yet.
It's not AI to a whole degree.
Yeah, we don't play the AI story at all. But
I was getting used to you get the man of a Matrix or something like that for a minute. That pool of people all attached to electrodes.
But it's software that does what we do. And that's what gives us the power and the speed and the scale of which we can achieve results and you can achieve return on investment in Pentera, is by essentially attacking yourself, hacking yourself, completely safely by design. We will through an automated software process, we will set up, or you can set up a variant. You know, the world's your oyster in terms of what you set up, in terms of how you try and attack yourself, essentially. Both from the outside in. So if you're looking at it from what do we advertise on the internet, what do we advertise on web-facing forms, public IPs, web-facing assets.
Yeah.
So what do we look like from an attacker's perspective from the outside in? But more so, I think that's more important that people want to know, because of the time that lapses between when a company is breached and when they find out they're breached. I think the key thing that we do, and what Pentera's built its reputation on, is our core offering, which is from the inside out. So assuming a breach, assuming an attacker's gotten a beachhead into you as a business, where can they get to? How quickly can they get there?
Navigate around vertically, horizontally, however.
Yeah, exactly.
How can they get around the network?
Privileged access and escalating that. So really going in depth into your security controls at scale using an automated piece of software. So whilst we don't replace people in terms of penetration testing, because if you're legislated or regulated that you need to have
someone validate
a human penetration tester who is CREST or check qualified, you still need to do that.
Fine.
But what we do using automation is allow companies and our partners to do this on behalf of their customers, to actually test continuously, to test those defensive security controls that you've got in play, as we talked about before, that perimeter, at scale, daily, hourly if you want to. It depends on how often you want to do it. So you can get really granular with the results that you get from it, and you can have real trust that the work that you're putting into your defensive cybersecurity strategy is actually doing what it should do. So you can now take a proactive take on your security environment rather than just being a reactive.
So if you then look at things like Qualys, which is like an ongoing vulnerability management tool that you could have within your toolkit as a business, and then you've got services like attack and breach simulation, is it similar again? Like with an attack and simulation, you would pick a window, say a week or a month, a year, where that service will be running, and therefore you're only going to get a very small window of that's the problem today or this week. But of course, as you've already said, and we're fully on board, changes are going on all the time. Is that where that continuous validation is different to the likes of Qualys and maybe an attack and breach simulation tool?
Very much so, yeah. So in terms of Qualys and the other vulnerability managers that are out there, Tenable, Rapid7, etc., all brilliant products in their own right, and in terms of assessing vulnerabilities within your environment. But Pentera doesn't look at us a vulnerability being a threat to you as a business unless you can apply an action against it. So so
it's executable. It's executable vulnerabilities, or ones that can actually be leveraged. They're the ones you're interested in.
Exactly.
If there's I'm not saying you wouldn't want to do your patch management or stuff that's not necessarily, because at some point it could become executable and something that you could leverage. But what you're saying is that you look at all that noise, bring it almost into a funnel and say, right, they're the vulnerabilities that actually can cause that business a problem, and they're the ones that you need to focus your teams in on to make sure they're the ones that are being addressed.
Exactly that. So I think the simplest analogy to put it as from an us versus them sort of thing. It's not an us versus them. In 99.9% of our customers, we live alongside a vulnerability scanner or management tool. But if you look at them, the easiest way to put it is that if you look at them as a shotgun approach, they'll look at your entire environment and they'll match a CVSS score against a CVE in your environment. But the reality is that none of that actually tells you whether that is, as you say, exploitable or executable on. So what we look at is, rather than that shotgun approach, you've got the rifle shot. You've got the rifle shot at the meaningful, what would do me most harm.
Okay.
What is the most critical risk that I've got in my business today?
Super.
But then not also today. What's the most critical risk tomorrow? Okay. Next week? Next month? In this area of my environment, in that area of my environment, you can point Pentera at specific areas because your business looks different all times of the day, right? It looks different 9 to 5:30 when you've got people in the office than it does out of hours.
Yep.
It looks different 24/7. It looks different if you're in retail. It looks different at the weekend to what it does during the week, for example.
Yep.
But you can really start to get granular with Pentera in terms of setting up those tests. Because once you've set up a test with Pentera, that test stays there. You schedule that test to happen every Monday at 5:30, for example. That test stays there until you stop. You can then stop it. You can stop asking it to do that.
Yep.
Otherwise, that runs as a regular test or scan, and you'll see your security posture essentially increase over time because you've got a much more realistic idea of what you look like from an attacker or a hacker's perspective than just having a vulnerability manager.
Okay, so then in terms of like the business challenges that you're then addressing, if we look at that, and I've already taken the topic off that, is saving people time because they're now focused on the areas that are actually going to make a difference to their business. We've got validating that the security investment they're making is being reviewed on a continual basis. So if there is something, I'm not talking about names, but if it's Checkpoint, Fortinet, whatever security tool they're using to help them level out their security posture, you're able to sanity check that investment, 9 out of 10 times it's probably going to be a badly configured piece of tin rather than actually the vendor or product itself.
True.
You're helping direct people, so you're going to save time, you're giving them that focus. You're validating that the investment they're making on a monthly, quarterly, yearly basis on the security toolkit they're using are doing the job that they're expecting them to do. Okay, that's interesting because I think that's one of the bits I probably hadn't understood from automated security validation. You're not just helping them save time and focusing actually on the areas of their security posture that need some attention. You're also validating that the security toolkit they've got and the investment they're making on a continual basis is doing the job they expect them to do. Because that's one of the challenges I've always had in security is I'll go into a customer or a prospective customer, recommend X, Y, and Z because we've done a security posture review, and we've uncovered that they've got some areas of weakness or areas that they hadn't necessarily focused on before. But actually, when we've then done it, how do we now validate and demonstrate to the customer that what we've actually recommended actually has improved their posture? We could go back in and do another security posture, but that's just a waste of money. But actually what you're saying is that for organisations where they're making technology changes or they're looking at their security strategy, actually Pentera will help them look at where their investments may be tactically more aligned to. Is that a fair assessment? Because if they've got a legacy AV, for example, legacy AV is still in the market, loads of people still use it, but there is, even in the mid-market now, we're seeing more and more organisations moving to EDR, XDR, EPP, whatever the acronym is today, of those different...
It changes often, doesn't it? Yeah.
Organisations are finding it difficult where they're paying £1 a user per month for a legacy AV, and they're now being told that's going to turn into £8-9 a user per month because EDR and EPP and XDR are all that bit more expensive. What you're saying is that Pentera may be a tool or automated security validation may be a tool that they can use to say, right, here's what our AV does. We're then going to look at changing the strategy from an endpoint perspective and then ask the business for that whatever amount of money they need to make that change. After it, because they've got Pentera, they'll be able to go back to the senior members of the board and everything else and say, right, this is the change that's actually brought to the party. Look at all this stuff now that we've able to we've mitigated because we've made that significant investment in changing technology that we've been using for the last 15 years or whatever.
Yeah, exactly that. This is a series of podcasts. We could sit here for hours talking about the business use cases and different ways in which our customers use the software to validate, as you said, validate their current security spend, but also to look at their legacy spend. Right, a lot of people, unless they do regular assessments, they might not know or asset management, they might not know what they've got in their environment. It goes then to, once you've sweated the asset, it then goes into procurement and they manage that sort of from a, do we need this sort of thing, and they try and get money off every year like teams do and should do But with Pentera, you can actually point Pentera at those legacy systems that you've got.
Okay.
And really understand if you're still using them anymore. Are they actually being used in a day-to-day user environment? Are they actually doing anything to protect me whatsoever anymore?
Okay.
Or have we got something that we've
invested
somewhere else, and it's counteracting that? So you can almost get rid of those. We call them internally, certainly in the UK at Pentera, zombie renewals, because you've got renewals that just sort of stumble through life, and no one knows actually whether they add any value to you as a customer at all. So you can use it on your legacy stuff.
Okay.
You can use it on your current, obviously, in terms of what your current security investment. But I think the really clever part is when you start to look at, you mentioned before, a lot of customers now looking at what was the next gen AV, or looking at the new EPP, EDR, whatever people want to call it these days.
Yeah.
But moving from those legacy AV vendors, or even upgrading those legacy AV vendors and adding modules that they might have that protect them even more these days. You can actually use Pentera to look at those future investments as well, right? So if one of them wants to come in and do a POV, a POC, whatever on their technologies, you can actually point Pentera at it and say, is this the right tool for my environment? You're not then trusting what they say. And as I said, or you mentioned, Pentera's not here to badmouth any vendor or anything like that. It's a different approach to security, because
you're not looking at you're not looking at the vendor. You're looking at how it's been configured.
Exactly that.
You're looking at making sure that tool, a firewall's a firewall, in my opinion. I know I'm probably going to go down very badly for saying that, but a firewall's a firewall. It's how it's configured, it's how it's validated, it's how it's consistently evolving to the configuration and the changes that are going on. You look at COVID, the amount of people that our help desk got phoned pretty much daily. We've gone from having 100 people or 500 people on-prem to now having 5 people now working from home. Our security posture's completely changed as our MSSP or managed service provider. How do we address that? And of course, I think during COVID, there was a lot of plasters going over problems. It wasn't necessarily strategically thought about, because there wasn't the time to think about it strategically. And I think actually one of the reasons why I'm really impressed that we've taken on Pentera is to help our customers and prospective customers with that massive shift in, look at cloud computing as well, with Azure and AWS and Google. People aren't just moving their people, they're moving their mass server infrastructures now into cloud environments.
Or at least hybrid.
They're keeping some strategic stuff or stuff on-prem, but then they're moving, some of that grunt into the cloud for, the reasons that cloud's being used for. And that entire posture change, that's really interesting, because you're going to potentially have legacy kit that you've been using for the last 10 years. You've now gone to cloud. You may have onboarded certain security layers that cloud provider either provides, or you've put something else in place, and there may be something that you've got in your toolkit that you used even 3 years ago that now has become completely benign
because you're not using it anymore. It's not actually fit for purpose as you as a business. You've moved on, but your security might not have done to the extent that you need it to anyway.
You're doing a continuous security posture review in some ways, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, it's coined as, or Pentera is automated security validation or continuous security validation. Either or, really. But really giving companies that ability to stress test at scale using automation. So, using everything that automation does. Automation is not a new thing, right? It's been around for a long, long time. Kellogg's did it with cornflakes back in the day. Ford did it with the Model T, and look what they've gone on to become as companies. So automation is not a new thing. No. It's not there to replace people. It's there to help. It's there to help people provide scalability, consistency, accuracy, reliability, speed. It's
and focus
all of these
as well.
Things.
That thing of focus as well. You look at the skills gap. Skills gap problem we've got in the IT market at the moment with engineers and techies. One of the biggest things. Whenever I go and meet a CTO or an IT director, the constant message I'm getting at the moment is I'm trying to maintain and retain my staff.
I haven't got enough people.
I've got enough people, but they're not necessarily, their skill set isn't focused on the areas that we now need people to be focused on. And if we can start, as a managed service provider, if we can start trimming down that, and this is where it fits. There's 2 other things I want to sort of cover in today's session. Firstly and foremost, you mentioned retail earlier, as in terms of one of the sectors that you said you've got some, experience in as Pentera. I'm going to ask you the question, because one of the points I made when I first started our conversations is I found it completely almost sector flat. There was no particular sectors. Whenever I normally sit down with a security vendor, I normally think, okay, that's going to fit manufacturing, or that's going to fit retail,
or utilities or energy.
You sort of get the feeling that they're going to be the first market because of compliance, regulations, whatever it may be, they're going to be the first mass vertical that's going to embrace it because of a business case. I don't see that with automated security validation. I almost see, actually, hold on a minute, you've got, depending on how the customer's going to use the tool, actually, it fits retail, it fits leisure, it fits manufacturing, it fits OT. It doesn't seem to be...
It's not suited for any particular one vertical. I think we solve, being on, as I sort of touched a bit on earlier, being involved in a proactive approach to security rather than a reactive approach to security, which is a different side of the market that I was ever used to. I didn't really know a huge amount about this side of the market when I came to Pentera.
That's a good analogy, actually, because a lot of what we do sell is reactive. Therefore, that's
defensive,
which is probably why different security vendors that bring their product to market probably have looked at a very specific business case and they've designed a product to deliver on that particular challenge.
Yep.
Where you've come in it the other way, you're automated rather than reactive, or you're proactive rather than reactive, and therefore actually that's probably why you're not as vendor orientated as some of the other security vendors are.
From a reactive point of view, I wholeheartedly agree. Yeah, I think vertical thing that we were discussing, I think it's every single company in the world has got a problem that Pentera solves, which is, as we mentioned before, the reality is you invest all of this money in the defensive cybersecurity controls, but you really just don't know if they work or not. No. When something bad was to happen, or there was to be a breach, or there was an attack, you don't actually know if they're all going to work in harmony together, like you said, because of potential misconfigurations that you've got. You don't actually know if they're going to do the job for you. And that's why I don't think we've got, globally, I'm not just talking in the UK, I don't think globally we've got a specific vertical or market that we're, usually you'll see on a vendor thing that's like, we do really well in finance and insurance, and then they all sort of tail off as to what the other verticals are. But with Pentera, it's that, like you said, it's that flat line of, in the last 12 to 18 months since I've been at Pentera, there's airlines, there's manufacturing, there's NHS trust, there's public sector in general, there's universities, there's tier 2 finance businesses, legal. It's so generic across all the board, because we solve that issue of, if you ask any security practitioner, would you like to know what the most critical risk is in your business by the end of the day, every day? There isn't many of them are going to say no. Most of them are going to say yes to that question, and automated security validation is the way to help do that.
What is automated security validation in the briefest way you can explain it to me?
So automated security validation is it gives customers, or it gives end users and partners the ability with their end users to stress test their entire defensive cybersecurity controls at scale using automation.
POVs, as you call it. How does that help clients understand if Pentera or automated security validation is right for them? What does the POV give you?
So we actually renamed the POV in the UK. It's still the POV for Pentera in general, but we've renamed it the One Day Challenge.
Okay.
And that's not because it's a challenge to you guys as the MSSP or the MSP or the reseller that your customers deal with. It's not a challenge to the end user even. It's a challenge to us because we like doing them.
Okay.
It's not a challenge to us because we've got very clever people who go and do these things, right? But we called it the One Day Challenge. And the challenge really is to our competitors, because we can achieve showing value, proof of value, which is essentially what POV stands for, right?
Yep.
We can prove value in less than a day.
Okay.
So it's quite a clever naming convention in terms of that, or a cheeky naming convention.
Yep.
But the challenge piece is that it's to our competition, really, in that breach and attack simulation space, which is generally agented. They have to install an agent on the endpoint to run a simulated attack on. We're completely agentless, so we don't need to actually deploy agents to the endpoint.
So it's quick, it's fast, it'll give them...
Exactly that. In the time that we're in and out, they probably wouldn't have even had approval from the change management to install an agent on the endpoint. And we're in and out and prove value. So
what sorts of things have you, from the POVs that you've personally been involved in, let's use some specifics here, let's get really down into the guts of it. The POVs you've done, give me some examples
of what we found,
and how that has helped the different types of people in IT, you know, from the technical layer all the way up to your CISOs. How has that helped them with their job?
So from a technical layer, it helps them with their job. You don't need to be a security practitioner to run Pentera, first and foremost. It's a very intuitive tool. We did a POV here, you'll remember, not so long back. And
people started running around.
People running around doing stuff on the fly, which is, it shows that it proves value very quickly, right? Because of automation and the speed and the scale that we've already talked about, we can start to prove that value very quick. So from a technical person, as I said, it's really intuitive as a platform, as a piece of software. So anyone can use. I reckon I could set it up to run, right? And I'm the channel sales manager. But I reckon I could set it up to run some scans. But from a technical person's point of view, it means that you're not concentrating on, I need to patch this, I need to patch that. You're looking at the ones that a hacker or an attacker could exploit.
Okay.
And then if you go up to the CIO or the CISO level point of view, you've got when you're spending. I mean, it can vary, right? $500,000 to $1 million to $2 million, depending on the size of the business.
Absolutely.
In terms of your security controls.
Yeah,
those people have got to go to that board every year and prove that investment's working.
Yeah.
Well, now you've got the ability with Pentera. You've got a third party who's validating that continuously. You're validating that spend.
Yep.
So if the CISO in a board meeting is ever asked, can we not carve that down? Can we not? It's like, no, because look at what it's doing for us.
Yeah.
And
it's all those investments broken down, and this is the value that they're bringing to the party.
And look at our posture going up.
Yeah.
So you're validating your spend on security.
Okay. So from a technical layer, it's all about directing them and giving that focus on dealing and looking at the things that actually make a difference and are going to improve things. Mm-hmm. And you've got the other end of the spectrum with your more senior management team. Actually helping them justify that the toolkit they're giving those technical people, that toolkit actually provides the value back to the business that they need.
Exactly that.
Fine.
Yeah, because I think for any company in the world, reputation is everything, right? And if you can prove that you're as secure as you possibly can be on a day-to-day basis rather than on a year-to-year basis, because let's be honest, changes aren't made year-to-year, changes are made day-to-day, and you need the ability, this new way of giving ability to your security team to actually prove that security is working.
So we've talked about POVs, Ben. Mm-hmm. Give me some stories. What have you seen? What's happened in those POVs?
Hackers will always look for the easiest way into you as a business, right? So we're looking to emulate that so you can shut those gaps.
Yeah, because if a hacker's going to be there for 20 minutes trying to get in, he's going to give up and go somewhere else.
Yeah, shut the door on them, right?
Absolutely.
The quickest that we've found, domain controller, username and password access, so essentially having the crown jewels, the crown jewels of the business. Essentially, we could shut you down if we wanted to. We wouldn't do that, of course. We'd just show you how we got there and the layers that you need to do, or the full attack vector, full attack map of how we got there and what you need to do to go and fix that. Yeah. But the quickest we achieve domain credentials in the UK is less than 45 minutes. So from starting, less than 45 minutes to essentially having the ability, if it was a hacker that got there, they'd have the ability to shut you down as a business or hold you to some sort of ransom to do that.
Blimey.
The other one that springs to mind, and this is more about companies knowing their assets that they've got out there and knowing their assets that are connected to their network and like essentially
rogue
to their security.
Or rogue devices.
It can be anything, right? It can be anything across the network. But the most interesting one that we found was that we found as a way into them as a business to actually essentially breach the company was through a Coca-Cola vending machine. Yeah. Because that vending machine had essentially a server in it that was connected to the network. And the reason it was connected to the network is because there was some sort of mechanism that was built in that when it dropped below X amount of cans that were left in there, it would automatically order another set so you could come and fill it up again.
IoT device then, yeah, absolutely.
But because that was connected to it and it hadn't had the latest patch of, I can't remember what it was now, but it hadn't had the latest patch applied to it because someone had gone, we haven't applied it to that. We found a way in through a Coke machine. Wow. And that's quite compelling that
because everyone talks about the IoT world in terms of, people can use them to, as you said, just gain access into the core network. You've had an experience where you've even seen it.
Exactly that.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay. It's a scary world out there, hackers, as we mentioned before, hackers and attackers all look for the path of least resistance, and they'll look for the easiest way they can get into it as a business. And if that is as simple as a machine that's probably used hour by hour, day after day, that someone is just forgot about, then they'll use that.
Why would IT think about a Coke machine?
Yeah, exactly.
There's no reason for it.
They might have installed something on it at some point, but we're humans, right?
Yeah,
we forget things. Yeah, Pentera will find that.
Wow. So
Ian, I'm conscious that it's been mainly you asking me questions in the podcast, but one thing that I quite like asking any partner really is why did Axians decide to partner with Pentera?
All the teams of Axians came together, or Axians Wokingham came together because of the next generation and where we see things going. You know, we've been doing some quite substantial reviews within our security proposition. I think COVID brought some attention that we had lots of services that were sort of a la carte, and we're trying to bring them all together as much more user-friendly platforms that we're going out to talk to customers about. And one that's come out of that is manage, detect and respond, which is, you know, bringing together component parts of what was our firewall managed service, our SOC team, our NOC teams. We'd sort of sell them as individual services, and we're trying to, in a roundabout way, I know organisations focus on MDR. We've always been doing MDR, just with separate teams of people. And one of the challenges that we've had, and it goes back to some of the points you've made, where we're responsible for people's security posture in its entirety, how can we be tactical with our approach in making sure that when we're sitting down with them in our yearly reviews and talking about their strategy and where they can go, how do we give them some quantifiable information about their networks? And that's where Pentera or automated security validation sort of came into it. We've had relationships with vulnerability management vendors in the past, and we've got contracts with third-party penetration businesses because we can't mark our own homework, obviously. And so, yeah, we sat down as a commercial team and a technical team and said, right, we've got all this great stuff, but how do we mark our own homework without marking our own homework so we can sit in front of our customers to say, right, the £30,000, £50,000, £100,000 managed service contract you've got with us, here is what that brings to your party. In the fact that we can now say to them, look, here's a service in automated security validation, which you can now invest in, not just to prove that we're doing our jobs properly, but also as well, the stuff that you're now focused on, because the likelihood is the reason they've outsourced certain component parts of their IT is because they want their internal IT team focused on the bits that are actually important, not the white noise. And actually, if we can now go to them and say, right, we're your MSSP, we're your managed service provider in this specific area, well, here's a tool now that you can use to quantify us, but also quantify all the tools that you're buying, which may have been recommended.
May have been through you, but it might be elsewhere.
Because our managed services are completely agnostic, you know, there may be products and services they've got that are being driven by, you know, head office or group or whatever, where we don't have an input into them using a specific firewall vendor or an endpoint product. Right. Yes, we're now, you know, through our SIEM and all the tools that we use from a security event and alert perspective, we're now collating all that in our SOC and analysing it. But actually, as you've said, if a change happens tomorrow, we're still relatively responsive in the fact that they've made a change. We don't see the change.
No.
We're now monitoring our systems. If that's ever exploited, that's when we're going to know about it. Because again, our security tools that we're using are all reactive. So actually to go to a customer now and say, right, to help justify us and to help justify the security tools that you're currently procuring, here is a tool now that you can use that's not once a quarter, once a month, once a year, however it may be that you do your sanity checks and validation through vulnerability tools or pen testing. We've now got a service that we can now help you on board that's going to give you some of that visibility as well, which I think is going to be great for us because I think it will really help our teams commercially and technically focus people in on the right areas of where some changes can be made.
So the people who are listening or watching or this podcast that we've done today, and this is a series, as we've said, we've got another couple of these coming up that we'll get some different guests on for. But what's the next action on you and me? What do we need to go and do to talk about it?
So I think in terms of next steps and how I see conversations going, I think anyone that's joined today, and the subject matter has resonated with them. They're interested in understanding more about automated security validation and where that may fit with them as an organisation. Mm-hmm. As a partner and as the vendor, I think a quick 10, 15-minute call with people to give them some one-on-one viewpoints of what they're doing, how they're doing it, the tools they're using, and have a transparent, candid conversation with people around how they're doing and what they're doing. Mm-hmm. I think actually it'd be quite quick in us understanding if they're a business that either has the risk appetite or the mindset really to think Pentera or automated security validation is right for them. Mm-hmm. So I think actually this is not going to be a long drawn out scoping call to sort of understand if the technical elements of it's going to, we haven't gone into the technicalities of Pentera or automated security validation, because that's not my bag. And it's not my bag as a commercial guy.
That's for the next podcast. We'll get the brains in to do those bits.
But I actually think if we've got one of your techie guys or one of my techie guys on a call, and we have that very high level conversation around what their security posture is, what their risk appetite is, we're going to very quickly see if they're a client or a prospective client that actually this fits with. Yeah. So I think actually I don't see this being the normal engagement vendor program that we've really ever gone through before.
Phone call,
absolutely.
That sort of
I don't see that happening.
No, it doesn't need to be that at all. I fully agree.
Yeah. So I think actually if this has resonated with anyone out there, give me a call. I'll bring Ben into a conversation. Or Rich or any of the other guys at Pentera.
Rich, Andy, Steve or Jack or Tom. It could be any of the team in the UK. Yeah, we'll bring them along and we can have that 10 or 15 minute just, this is what we do, this is what you've got.
Yeah.
Is it going to fit?
Yeah, and I think that will be the starting point.
Yeah.
And then actually, down the road we can then talk about commercials, we can talk about how it's going to fit the business.
The one-day challenge.
Yeah. So I think actually it's going to be a very different engagement program to what
traditional vendor partner engagement you've had with end users.
Absolutely.
In the past.
Those said those 2 hours, 3 hour scoping calls to see, if they got a vendor in place already that we're looking to replace, or is there something else that, they might have multiple tools that are doing it and we're looking to consolidate that into a single platform. It's not going to be those types of calls. It's going to be a very quick, this is what we do, this is how we do it. Is that an area of concern for the business? Either justifying security spend, or are you spending lots of time in looking for the white noise and trying to slim that down into some actionable actual content? Mm-hmm. So I'm really looking forward to it, because I think it'll be a very quick gauge for both sides of the table, the customer and us, to be able to take away from a quick call, is it going to be suitable for you or not?
I fully agree. And cool. We see that across the board. I think it's a key way of first engaging with customers and, like you said, with prospects as well. What we do and what Pentera does alongside Axians, it is unique. It is disruptive. It's not generally a displacement, because we don't replace penetration tests. We don't replace people, as we've talked about. It's just a simple, honest, open discussion. This is what we do. Most people are going to say it is of interest, and we branch it out from there. But we're not going to take up hours and hours of your time on a scoping call or anything.
No.
As Ian said, give him or one of the other team at Axians across the board, and me and one of my team 10 or 15 minutes. And if it's good, it's good. Yep. If it's not, it's 10 minutes.
Absolutely. Yeah. So thank you very much indeed for today. Really appreciated your time.
No problem at all.
Looking forward to working with you again. I look forward to engaging with our customers and prospective customers on how Axians, in partnership with Pentera, can work with you and take this conversation forward. So thanks again for today.
No problem at all,
and
mate.
Thanks everyone for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you.